My name is Allison Guerin, and I want to thank you for joining me today for the content presentation for Week 1 of Advanced Social Psychology. What we're going to be doing today is taking a brief look into the reading assignment for the week to further get an idea of what social psychology is and why it is important to us and our field of study. Now, as we all know, the reading for the week included both of the texts and 2 journal articles. In the first text, I'm going to reference The Theories of Social Psychology by Derek Chady. We read in Chapter 8 about the interdependence in social interactions, where we explore different aspects of the interdependence theory and its tenets and ways to understand human behavior and human interaction. The second text we're going to reference is the social psychology text by Kaysen, Fine, and Marcus. In this text, we are asked to read chapters 1 and chapters 2. In chapter 1, we see the definition of social psychology, and we also see how social psychology differs from other related areas of psychology with regards to human behavior. In Chapter 2, we begin to take a deeper look at various aspects of social psychology through research and research methods. I had also mentioned that we are asked to read 2 journal articles. The first journal article is The Behavioral Study of Obedience by Stanley Milgram. The second journal article is by Philip Zimbardo, and that is a study of prisoners and guards in a simulated prison. Now, what I would like to do is to take the next several minutes to look over the points that piqued my interest during the week's reading. What I'm going to do now is just give you the 5 major points in a bullet form, and we'll expand on them a bit further in the presentation. The first one I'm going to review is the definition of social psychology. Number 2 is recognizing the differences between social psychology and other related fields. Number 3, the benefits of research in social psychology. Number 4, using research to understand human interaction in social psychology. And number 5 is the interdependence in social interactions, primarily the interdependence theory by Seibel and Kelly in The Social Psychology of Groups, written in 1959. So now here we are with point 1, the definition of social psychology. As mentioned in both texts and in the video presentation by Dr. Benjamin Wood, we find that social psychology is the scientific study of how individuals think, feel, and behave in a social context. Social psychology is a science. It applies a scientific method of systematic observation, description, and measurement to study human behavior. The second portion of the definition is talking about how people think, feel, and behave. Social psychology looks at a whole myriad of things, including individuals' attitudes towards other groups of people and ourselves in a given setting. Lastly, it looks further into social context. This is where we look more at the social nature of individuals. It does not have to be real or present at the time. It can be an implied event. Now we want to look at the differences between social psychology and other related fields. The text gives us different types of psychologists and what their focus is on in their field. And then it also gives a social psychologist and what we're focused on. The first one is clinical psychologists. Clinical psychologists seek to understand and treat people with psychological difficulties and disorders. Now, we're social psychologists, we're more focused on the way people think, feel, and behave, and how we influence each other. The second one we have are personality psychologists. Personality psychologists seek to understand stable differences between individuals, whereas social psychologists attempt to understand the social factors that affect others. Thirdly, we have cognitive psychologists. Cognitive psychologists study mental processes such as thinking, learning, remembering, and reasoning. Social psychologists are also interested in these mental processes, but we're more concerned with the social context that they occur in through research. This brings us to the third point, the benefits of research methods in psychology. Research methods in psychology can improve our reasoning about real-life events and problems. Research methods puts us in a better position to critically evaluate the information we are exposed to and separate fact from fiction. Research methods also give us a better understanding of the research findings and study cases we will be reading, therefore giving us a deeper comprehension of the material. Now that brings us to our fourth point, using research to understand social psychology. Research asks questions, and those questions come from a variety of sources. Using research, we are able to find out what has already been done, which will in turn create more questions and additional research. Research helps us to shape the information we gather into hypotheses. We find in the text that a hypothesis is a testable prediction about the conditions under which an event will occur. Now, with these hypotheses, we in turn will collect data to create theories. And again, according to the text, a theory is an organized set of principles used to explain observed phenomenon. Once a theory is created, we may need to test that theory using basic research or applied research. In the text, we find that basic research is research whose goal is to increase the understanding of human behavior, often by testing hypotheses based on a theory. With that being basic research, we also look to applied research. Applied research is research whose goal is to make applications to the world and contribute to the solution of social problems. We see this in both of the journal articles mentioned in the introduction. We see it in Milgram's behavioral study of obedience. In that study, we see that Milgram looked at obedience as a determinant of behavior and uses the threat of electrical shock therapy to get others to conform. We also see the struggle that the subjects are experiencing when instructed to give higher doses and at times lethal doses of electrical shock to the other subjects of the study. Now, we also mentioned Zimbardo's study of prisoners and guards in a simulated prison setting. This study was conducted to further examine the basic psychological mechanisms underlying human aggression and conformity. This study was sponsored by the Office of Naval Research to develop an effective training for recruits by putting them in certain conditions to prepare them for possible situations that may arise. Next, since we're talking about theories, we want to segue into the interdependence theory from the Social Psychology of Groups by John Thibault and Harold Kelly, written in 1959. Many of our interpersonal relationships can be understood by using the tenets of the interdependence theory. The interdependence theory has been used to understand close relationships and workplace behaviors, as well as behavior in other relationships that we have. According to Thibault and Kelly, a situation can be interdependent if two or more of the interacting actors have influence over the outcomes of one another. Now, the actors in these interdependent situations, they can be people, they can be companies, they can be countries, as long as they're interacting. The best way to understand Feivel and Kelly's interdependence theory is to take a look at the core ideas or the tenets of their theory. This includes outcome matrices, comparison levels, alternatives, and then dependence and power. What I want to do now is just take a look at each of these core ideas or tenets and then just expand on them slightly. Outcome matrices. They become an essential tool in which to explore human interactions. Outcome matrices, they're represented all of the potential behavioral choices of two interacting individuals and the rewards and costs associated with each behavioral choice. The reward and costs are not just objective, but include the subjective experiences of the individual. If we think back to the text, we're reading, we looked at Yolanda. Yolanda had a choice to make, either between staying at her job where she was valued but underpaid, or going to a job where she was going to be higher paid but probably undervalued. Now we're going to look at comparison levels. Each individual has an expectation about the level that he or she deserves. These expectations arise through personal experiences and observing others in similar situations. If we don't find these comparison levels, we might turn to comparison level alternatives. This is the lowest set of outcomes that an individual will accept in lieu of the preferred alternative relationships. Again, we look back to Yolanda. She's measuring her comparison levels and alternatives to decide whether she will stay or leave her current place of employment. Lastly, we come to dependence and power. This is where one of the individual's dependence on a relationship is related to the other individual's power in an interdependent situation. With this, there comes varying levels of control. We find partner control, where one individual can affect the other's outcome regardless of what he or she does during the interaction. And then there's joint control. This is where one individual can use his or her control of the other's outcomes to change their behavior. In most situations, rarely does one have complete partner or joint control over the other. They are usually able to come to mutual ground, and then we'll find mutual partner control or mutual joint control. This brings me to my discussion board questions for the night. It says, based on the Chapter 8 reading in Chady discussing the interdependence and social interactions, what are some of the first examples in the Bible that can be correlated with Feivel's and Kelly's interdependence theory, and which theory would they fall under? When I thought of this question, and I'm thinking of biblical times, and I'm thinking of social interaction, immediately a couple of things came to the forefront of my mind, and I'm excited to see what you all will be able to bring to the discussion. My second discussion board question, also with regards to the interdependence theory from Feivel and Kelly and the social psychology of groups, how do one or all of the tenets affect how we think, feel, or behave in our personal relationships today? Now myself, I'm going to just let you know that during the week, I observed and I watched and I looked and I watched the staff and the people that we serve, and I'm sad to say that there was a lot of control with dependence of power, the joint control or the partner control. And as I watch this and how we're trying to alter a person's outcome or behavior by the outcomes that we can give them or not, I was saddened by it. So this is one of the things that really piqued my mind, because this is something that I want to hope to maybe change in the future as I learn more about social psychology. In conclusion, when looking through all of the information given in the texts and articles and the presentation for the week, I came across a quote by Ian Russell, and this was in the Social Psychology text by Kaysen, and that states, you give people facts and you feed them their minds for an hour. If you awaken their curiosity, and then they are able to feed their own minds for a lifetime. Thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.